Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching 90 Day Fiancé. Let's get to the show.
It requires so much of your time and effort.
Well, there is no store.
What you're telling me is you've been lying to me this whole time.
I mean, if you gotta put it that way. There's no shop. It was an idea, because honestly, we're just trying to find a way to make a living. And it just didn't work out.
Why would you make it up?
Maybe I just wanted her to get off my back about why we weren't getting married, because honestly, we weren't getting married just because it was a lot of stress from both families, a lot of pressure, and it's just a lot more than I expected.
Interesting. All right, so let's analyze this. She's saying that they were planning on getting married, I think for the second or third time. I think this was last season, right? And they're saying that they were both overwhelmed with all the pressure from the families, which I get, honestly. And they didn't want to get married that way anymore. And so they decided to come up with a lie that instead of putting the money towards the wedding, they were going to put the money towards a store. And they lied to everyone to get them off their back so that they could, be in control of their own lives. All right. Did that work? Well, I guess kind of. I mean, it did get people off their back, but it just created another problem that they got on your back about instead, right? It's like you solved one problem but created three more, because now everyone in the family was like, where is the store? This seems really shady. That's just another reason why we hate Azan. Now, we can't necessarily trust Nicole in this instance either, because she said there was a store. There wasn't a store. Now she's saying her and Azan were both knowing there wasn't a store. Maybe she didn't know there wasn't a store, and then later on she found out there wasn't a store, and now she's just saying she always knew because she doesn't want to tell the cameras that Azan scammed her out of $6,000. I don't know. There's just a lot of options there. But assuming that she did know from the beginning, which I think is quite possible, let's analyze that. Now, when we look at Nicole's personality, we see someone who, at least around her mother, will act quite young. Someone who will, it hasn't lately, but in the earlier seasons would whine and feel overwhelmed pretty easily and would have a hard time making her own decisions in life and would be very scared of being criticized or judged by her family. Had a hard time standing on her own 2 feet. Now, she is on the young side, so it's not unusual to be like that at that age, but it seemed a little excessive. And then we wondered, okay, well, why is that? Well, then we saw the dynamic of the family. They seemed to be quite over-functioning for her. And then we would look towards Nicole's behavior and we'd say, well, maybe there are two reasons for that. One is that she was never given a chance to make her own mistakes and get her own self-esteem. That seems possible. I'd have to ask the family. Who knows? Again, I always am speculating. The other possibility is that when you are dependent, when you feel incompetent, but you're trying to get competence, you will resort to things that you wouldn't normally. So let me give an analogy to a younger person. Let's say that you go to the park with your 4-year-old and you are on a mission to help your 4-year-old daughter learn how to play with other kids while you watch on the sidelines. And you go to the park and your kid is afraid and you're like, I don't want to go play, but you kind of know your kid wants to play. So you take your time and you're like, well, if you go out and play, I'll let you have some candy in 15 minutes. Just go play for about 15 minutes, just get to know the kids. Johnny's over there, you know him. And then little Nicole says, oh, okay, I'll go over there. Nicole goes over there and she's playing on the thing. And then Nicole, not this Nicole, I don't know why I'm saying Nicole, the little daughter, she gets rambunctious and pushes a kid. The kid falls down. You can kind of tell that your daughter didn't really mean to do that, but your daughter pushed a kid. And then there's some crying, and then your daughter comes running back. And you're like, oh, what happened? What happened there? And your daughter's like, oh, well, someone pushed me down. And you know that that's not true. Okay, so what's happening in that moment? Well, what's happening is the 4-year-old is ashamed, feels like they screwed up. The 4-year-old wanted to succeed. When they went to the jungle gym, when they went to the playground to play with the kids, they were afraid, but they wanted to succeed. They were hoping that things were going to go well, And they could say, look, I'm a big girl now. I can play with all the other kids, and I don't have to always be next to my parents. But things didn't go right. They made a mistake. And they came running back, and they wanted to salvage their self-esteem, at least in your eyes, and they lied about it. The daughter says, I was pushed down. One, this is negating the fault that she did. It also is saying, don't ever let me do that again. This is your fault. You pushed me to go play with those other kids, and look what happened. They pushed me down. All right, so kids do that sometimes because they're desperate, and it's that action. There's a lot of complication there. The kid is afraid. So there's two things. The kid's afraid, wants to stick next to the mom, but also wants to go play and succeed, is afraid of it not going well, and is also afraid of judgment from the mom. There's all these fears. The parent is also kind of afraid, but saying, I think you can do it. And so there's all these dynamics happening in that moment. Okay. So if you don't do that enough times, and you don't rinse and repeat that process with your children enough times, age appropriate, at the age of 2, at the age of 7, at the age of 15. If you don't navigate that well enough in a family, you can have a 20-something-year-old woman who basically is still arrested in their development as if they're 4 years old and they're hanging onto your knee. And when they screw up, they will lie about it because they just are so ashamed in the way that a 4-year-old, when a 4-year-old lies about that, you don't like it, but you accept it because you're, well, they're 4 and they just say things because they're terrified and they don't know. They'll learn. They'll get used to it. Well, when a 20-something does it, it's much more alarming. You're like, why would a 20-something-year-old person lie about something like that? It doesn't make any sense. It's immoral. What's going on there? Well, when you don't allow kids to go through those steps and they don't learn the lessons, which it takes day in and day out. It's not just like one instance per year. It's literally hour by hour for kids where they learn these little lessons where, okay, I can do this. Okay, I can make a mistake. Okay, I can tell my parents the truth. Okay, sometimes I lie and that actually doesn't go well for me. Okay, if I pump myself up, I can actually go out there and do better. Okay, if I navigate this better, if I'm nicer to people, things go well. Okay, just a whole, just billions of little micro skills and little micro experiences that people have, such that when they are 24 years old and they're experiencing all this pressure from the outside, you got to get married like this, you got to do it like this. And then you and your spouse are both dependent and both immature because you've both been denied that growing up, and you're overwhelmed. You're like, let's just call the wedding off. Well, let's just lie about it. We'll just say there's a store. That is a childish thing to do. Why do people do that? Do they wake up in the morning and go, ha ha ha, I'm going to be an annoying little woman child right now? No. It's probably because of these arrested developments. It doesn't excuse the behavior. Lying is lying. You know me. Lying is lying. That is immoral. It is a wrong thing to do. There is never a good enough excuse to lie, especially as an adult. But it does put it into context, and it does give us a way forward. Now, the temptation here from the mom probably is to chastise her and judge her and to shame her. Well, that's akin to when your daughter comes back and she says, someone pushed me down, and you know how terrified your 4-year-old was. You know how much it meant to her to succeed in that moment. You know how fragile her ego is in this moment. And you say to her, no, I saw you push that boy down. How dare you lie to me? Most parents intuitively know that's not the right thing to do in that moment, right? Well, if you do that to Nicole right now, total speculation, I'm guessing that's essentially what's happening. What helps, again, if we go back to that analogy with the 4-year-old, what helps with the 4-year-old is to not call them out on their lie in that moment anyway. And you say, maybe you generalize it. Oh, really? Wow, it sounds like things didn't go how you hoped they would go. But I'm guessing, everyone makes mistakes sometimes, and I'm guessing that things will go better next time. Sometimes accidents happen, and that's okay. You speak in that general, like you're not calling them out on the lie, but you're also kind of just generalizing to include what actually you saw, which is that they accidentally pushed a kid down. And you say, you'll do better next time, or things will work out next time, or maybe let's sit here and let's have our sandwich, and then maybe you can think about going back out again. But that's totally up to you. Like, you don't chastise, you consider, you understand where they're at, and you react appropriately to that. I don't know anything about Nicole's history. I don't know how she was raised. Maybe everything was fine. But as a therapist, that would be my instinct in this moment is, okay, wow. So this whole thing was one big grand lie. Why? Because you didn't want to get married. You couldn't just say that. You couldn't just say, hey, everyone, you guys are annoying me with your pressure. We want to postpone the wedding. We thought about lying to you, but we don't want to do that. You didn't just tell us? Like, what kind of behavior is that? That's crazy talk. So, yeah, but given her developmental issues, there's another path forward if we're trying to help her mature such that she won't have this impulse in the future, where if you react the way you typically react, then we're just compounding the issue, just giving another reason why in the future she, one, won't feel like she's capable enough of being able to play in the playground by herself, and two, that if she makes a mistake, terrible things are going to happen, i.e. judgment from other people. Anyway, let's continue watching.
On me that you gave him $6,000 to start this store.
We were looking at a store, and we did have pictures of a store.
Of a store.
Yeah.
Was this because of him?
No.
Did he make you do this?
He didn't make me do it. I wouldn't do it just because he asked me to. Sorry, I don't know.
You know
why.
how I feel about lying.
I lied, but you guys are really pushy. And when you were there in person, he was very nervous around you.
All right, interesting. So we're now getting to what I would call passive aggression. The world likes to use passive aggressive, the term, in a very loose way, which is fine, but it is a clinical term. And so clinically speaking, this is passive aggression. So she felt, and maybe both her and Azan felt, like they were being imposed upon somehow, a lot of pressure or judgment or something. And to get back at the aggressor, but you feel like you can't do it directly. You feel like you can't say to the person, hey, back off. I don't like this. If you feel like you can't do that, you feel like you're not safe to express your anger, that for one reason or another, either because of abuse or you're going to get judged or discounted or something, then you will use hidden ways, roundabout ways to express your anger. And that's what we call passive aggression. Another phrase is hidden hostility. I like to use hidden hostility because it's much more descriptive. It's aggression. People don't necessarily know what that in clinical terms. Aggression is more akin to hostility than it is to violence. And passive is, in this context, is more akin to hidden than passivity. Passivity, it sounds like, oh, I'm so passive. Passive aggression in the clinical sense, in the personality disorder sense, and listen to my whole deep dive that's just for patrons on passive aggressive personality disorder. It's not in the DSM anymore, but it used to be, because of people like this who were raised in a way that felt like they couldn't express their anger. And so now they dysfunctionally express their anger through hidden ways that actually are very self-defeating. Like I said earlier, you're trying to solve one problem by creating three. She was trying to solve one problem. I say, hey, back off. We don't want to get married right now. But they're going to lie about it and incur all this judgment and all these other judgments about, like, he's stealing your money and all that other stuff. So that's another. I don't know if that is accurate to her personality. I'd have to assess her for weeks and get confirmation from her about this. But at least that behavior in and of itself was passive aggression. Now, the common response is, how dare you? But again, Jesus Christ. Okay, so I paused the recording because an Amber Alert just happened and completely surprised me, and I have no idea what I was saying. So let's get back to the show.
Sorry, I don't know.
You know
why.
how I feel about lying.
I lied, but you guys are really pushy. And when you're there in person, he was very nervous around you.
He's got my daughter and my grandbaby. Of course, I want to make sure you guys are taken care of. I mean, what? I'm supposed to constantly worry about whether or not you have enough money for food?
Right. So you hear from Nicole, she's saying, well, the reason why we lied to you is because you're such a meanie. So that is probably accurate. They probably did lie to her because they did see her, they did think of her as a meanie. And instead of coming straight on and saying, stop being mean to us or whatever, they decided to lie. That's a passive aggression. There are people that will, because of developmental reasons growing up, meaning that they were relationally traumatized. I'm still trying to relax from that Amber Alert. I mean, why does it have to be so stupid loud? I mean, if you're watching television and you take over the screen, you don't also have to wake up the neighbors from your own television, right? Like, that was the loudest noise. Anyway, instead, people will, as a passive aggression, because when they're young, they're treated in a way where they can't be angry, so they learn that they have to be angry around the corner. And one of the things that people will do is they'll actually cheat on people. That sounds very strange, right? It's like, why would you cheat? Well, there's a lot of reasons why people cheat, but one of the reasons that I've found clinically, I've seen this many, many times, is you're in a relationship and the romantic relationship, it's not going well, and one of the individuals, one of the members has what we call passive-aggressive personality, and they have anger, and they want to express that to their partner, but because of previous relationships, they feel like they don't have the power to do that, and maybe even because this person is also overpowering, because sometimes they choose that. And so they will sit on their anger, and it won't go anywhere, but it's got to go somewhere eventually. And then they go off and they sneak away and they cheat, and they might not even ever tell this person, but it's a fantasy that it feels like they actually expressed the anger somehow. It's like, I got back at them. Now, it might also be this weird feedback loop of aggression where the person, as they are cheating, they are also self-abusing. It's a complex disorder, but when you're abused in a way that makes you feel like you can't express your anger, when you're terrified in that way, you, one, have a ton of anger towards the abuser, but you also have a ton of anger at the self because this abuser has taught you that you deserve to be punished, and so you end up internalizing that. And so through the cheating action, you're, one, getting back at your spouse because you're cheating on them because you know that they won't like it. But you're also kind of abusing the self in that sense because you're also shaming yourself as you're doing it. That's what happens. And it's just one of the myriad of ways that passive-aggressive people will express their anger through dysfunctional means. I don't know if this is accurate to this situation, but I would want to know from Nicole if that made any sense. And it would give us a path forward and I've worked with people like this before, of instead of hiding your anger, maybe we should express it so it doesn't have to go around the corner and thus create more problems for you. All right, well, that does it for that episode in which I react to the TV show 90 Day Fiancé, Happily Ever After, Season 4. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.